Afro World View, formerly ANN7, from the controversial Gupta family last year, after Multichoice said that the channel's contract would not be renewed, and we saw the effects of that last night. He then tried to rebrand this channel. There were a lot of perceptions because it was linked to the Gupta family, but the end of the road has still been reached. What does this mean for media diversity? And of course, we'll also put job losses in the spotlight to discuss. So we're joined from the Communication Workers Union here in studio, Aubrey Chabalala, General Secretary, and on the line for us is author, former editor and professor of journalism, Anton Harber. So Anton, let me start with you. Whether you loved it or hated it, I think we are accepting that it's very hard to be independent, to be neutral all the time. So we should aim for diversity. Do you think that a little bit of diversity has been lost in South Africa?
Well, under normal circumstances, you would say the closure of any media outlet or television station is a loss to diversity. But we have very particular circumstances here. This was a station that was started as part of the state capture project. It's really, for most of its life, it was there perpetuating fake news, looking to distort and manipulate our political debate. So in terms of diversity and media freedom, there are not many people, apart from those who are still trying to defend the state capture project, who are mourning its demise. You know, in recent weeks, Mr. Manyi, Mzwanele Manyi, who took it over from the Guptas, has tried to take it down a respectable journalistic and media path. But frankly, it was just too late. The scars, the reputation it had was just unchangeable.
And do you think he should take some of the responsibility for that? I mean, when he bought this company, he was seen as the biggest black owner in South Africa, but many people asking, was it legitimate? Anyway, that's very strange vendor financing. Questions about whether he actually paid a cent for this or not.
Well, if he paid anything at all, then I feel sorry for him because it was a very foolish thing to do. Because it really wasn't worth anything at all. Yes, it's sad to see a venture with a black owner run into trouble, but really Mr. Manyi took over what was part of the state capture project. It took him a while to change it, to lead it in a different direction. You know, only when he saw that it was his only possible way out. So I'm afraid he's brought a lot of this on himself.
Anton, I hear what you're saying about the credibility of the channel, but questions are being asked. Should you have a private company, Multichoice, becoming the arbiter of what's fake news, what's good news, what's quality, and what's not in our democracy?
So I think that's a different issue, and I think that is a problem. The power of Multichoice as a well-established monopoly, and its capacity, its undue influence in deciding what news we get or don't get and what media we see or don't see. There are grave concerns about that, and I think that is something to be very concerned about, yes.
When digital TV comes, though, then presumably government steps into that role. Well, everybody's thinking it'll be this panacea, there will be more channels, but that has problems of its own, so it's a very difficult issue. It
is very difficult. You know, we saw Multichoice with its predecessors establish a monopoly under the apartheid regime, and it's extraordinary the way it's perpetuated it in a new open society. And there is a grave issue, I think, with the weakness of the regulator and the regulatory system to manage this properly and to ensure they're not too strong a monopoly and that they don't abuse that in determining what news we see or don't see. I think that is a real issue.
So are there any answers, anything we should aim for?
Well, I certainly have written that Multichoice should have a much more open process of choosing a new licensee for this license, so that at least it doesn't look like them just making the kinds of decisions they've done in the past. But I do think that it's the role of the regulator here to try and ensure they exert greater control and try and introduce real competition to MultiChoice.
All right, Anton Harbour, please stay on the line with us. I believe that we have been joined by Mzwanele, who's the chairperson of the South African National Editors Forum. Welcome to you. But first, let me come to the studio and speak to Aubrey Chabalala from the Communication Workers Union. So you are worried about the 350 or so jobs. Have you received a firm commitment from MultiChoice that they will try and absorb these jobs in the new channel, which will have different owners? So I don't know exactly how this will all work.
Well, good evening first. We have met MultiChoice in February earlier this year when the first announcement was made with regards to ANN7 at the time to be shut down. But that was not only our main concern. We had two-pronged concern. Firstly was that we are concerned about the independence of editorial. Secondly, we are concerned about the number of jobs that will be lost in the process. As you know, that as a country, we sitting above 9 million of people unemployed. And in the journalist fraternity, it's a very small world. And if you job shading there, you're causing more problems. So that's why we have approached this in two-pronged. And MultiChoice have committed, have released a joint statement with us in February and agreed that will also formulate a team that will deal with the transition of those workers should there be a new.
So does this mean they will try and find jobs for the workers, or they are going to ensure that these workers will have jobs, which means that they have to put a condition on the new channel that comes in?
We strive for a condition on the new
but you haven't got that yet?
No, that's what they promised us. That's what they said they will give to us, because obviously if you are going to rely on a gentleman's agreement or word of mouth, you are not going to get it at the end of the day. So another thing that we have to apply is what we call Section 197, where if a new employer has to take over a particular function, the workers in that environment goes with an ongoing consent to take over their jobs with whatever that they were having in the previous employer.
All right, let's speak to Mzwanele from SANAF, the National Editors Forum, on Skype for us tonight. Mzwanele, I don't know if you heard Anton Harbour's views earlier. Normally we would strive for diversity. That's how you ensure that there are different voices in the media. You avoid monopolies. But he says this is no great loss.
I don't agree with that part. I think that when we had our meeting with DSTV following the announcement that they're going to be cancelling the contract with the channel, one of the things we were asking them was for them to publicize their internal report, because we wanted to understand why the decision was actually taken by MultiChoice. Remember where this is coming from. This came from the reports that were done, that news reports that there were dubious payments that were made to the channel by the Gupta family, and part of it was to influence government policy. And we know that at the time, the minister then, Faith Mutambi, was looking into the encryption policy, and according to those reports and the Gupta leaks, they revealed that then there were policy documents that were sent to the minister by an employee of MultiChoice. Then MultiChoice then did this investigation, but they never publicized the investigation, and we never knew what was the content and what was the finding. One of the things that they did release was say that there was no criminality, but then took the decision to then remove the channel. One of the things they did mention in our meeting with them was that there were several complaints to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission, and we were very steadfast to say that you cannot remove a channel because of BCCA complaints. And many of us do get those complaints. What is important is that we comply and we learn from them, and then we do better. Multiplicity of voices is important. It doesn't mean that any media house must then throw the rule book of ethical journalism out of the window. But if there are problems, there are regulatory bodies like the BCCSA where people can actually go and complain.
The question, Mzwanele, is though, as a private company, should MultiChoice care firstly about unemployment in South Africa, about the need for a diversity of views? This is a private company. They said they failed to do their due diligence. Can't they pick and choose who they do business with?
We disagree with that. We think that they, as a part of the South African fabric and ensuring that our democracy is strengthened, they have to see themselves playing that very critical role. As Anton was saying, they are currently the dominant player. Nobody else can actually compete with them. So the responsibility is even greater on MultiChoice to ensure the diversity of views, multiplicity of voices, and they have to operate within that structure. And I think that though there is a responsibility by others in government, in authority, to ensure that there is competition to MultiChoice so that it cannot be the referee and the player at the same time. And then we can't also compromise multiplicity of voices and strengthening our democracy on a private entity. Then that becomes difficult to implement whatever policies or visions for South Africa we see necessary.
All right, let's return to Professor Anton Harber. Anton, you can comment on that. And also, do you think that MultiChoice has dealt with its own reputational problems? There were claims of corruption in those former contracts. That's what it's trying to distance itself from. And do you think South Africans will appreciate a gesture like ensuring that these 350 journalists get new jobs with the new channel?
I don't think MultiChoice has dealt fully with its reputational problem. It behaved absolutely appallingly around the agreement it had and its relationship with both the ANN7 and SABC. And its explanations and investigations into that have been inadequate. Let me say that clearly. I agree entirely with Mzwanele that they may be a private company, but they have the same obligation as we all do as citizens and corporate citizens to care about the quality of journalism, to care about media diversity, and to care about unemployment. They are not immune from that. On the issue of the jobs, look, it's the greatest concern in this transfer are the individuals who find themselves unemployed. And one hopes they can all, or as many as possible, can find a place in whoever wins the new license. It seems to me it would be completely extraordinary for MultiChoice to guarantee that whoever gets the new license has to employ everyone, foot's toots, so to speak. I think they can encourage it, and they can encourage them to consider, or even force them to at least consider everyone. But I just can't see a wholesale absorption of all the staff members being imposed on a new licensee.
Yeah, you are telling a new company who to employ. Aubrey, you say that there is a firm commitment there.
Yes, look, we must consider the act of the country. There is Section 197. It says to you, if you are going to take over a business that is existing with its own employee, you take those workers with an ongoing concern. And so it's not something that is wish-wash that we are trying to find out. It's something that exists. And the MultiChoice, by the latest ruling of the Constitutional Court, it becomes a primary employer anyway. But what is ironic about this, you'll recall that when Mzwanele Manyi was still a DG in the Department of Communication, was against the digitalization, which now comes back to haunt him. Because now you'd have swiftly moved to be an independent
That is interesting. Digitalization would have helped.
He was very strong on it.
All right, let's end off with Mzwanele. I'd like your opinion. I mean, this is a problem, and we're talking about job losses. Basically, everybody relying on MultiChoice or government to survive. We know there's a problem with ads as well. But shouldn't there be this budding of channels online? Shouldn't we accept that there's a shift in the media landscape and things are going to change?
Look, just to say that when we met with MultiChoice, we did put to them whether, as part of the bidding process or the bidding conditions that they'd put out, it would be for the new channel that comes in to hire the employees of Afro World View. And they said at the time that they couldn't guarantee that, but it would be something that they would push ahead with. So if CW has managed to get a firm agreement, that would be welcome news. But obviously, we are hoping that the new channel does create opportunities for those journalists, because it is a difficult industry industry at the moment, as you say, because of declining ad revenue. But also, you talk about online platforms that are available, then we must talk data must fall, because that is also the challenge. And another challenge that we're seeing is that in terms of ad spend, South African companies are spending the money elsewhere. They're spending it on Google, they're spending it on Facebook, and not on the online platforms that are currently in existence. So while that is the future, and we're hoping that even the business sector will see the role of the media and South African media and support it in advertising revenue, at the current moment, it is a very difficult space to operate in. And of course, not everybody has access to the internet. And if we are talking inclusivity, we need to make sure that people have access, and it's not just for the rich and the elite and those who can afford.
All right. Thank you so much all for your comments. A fraught issue, two top journalists disagreeing. At least the CWU say they do have a firm commitment that those 350 jobs will be saved. We'll hear which black-owned business has received that tender in a week's time. That was Mzwanele, the chairperson of the South African National Editors Forum. We also had Professor of Journalism, author and former editor Anton Harber, and in studio with me, Aubrey Shabalala, the General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union.